Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Creatives Podcast. Doing things a little bit differently today. We're going to be doing virtual interviews. I am one of your co-hosts, Simone Campbell.
And I am your other co-host, Tevin Brown.
Fantastic. And today we have on the founder of Austin Film Crew, passionate creative with expertise in music, film, large-scale experimental film projects, John Rinehart. Thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. I'm glad to be here, guys.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit about your background, your origin. Let's start there at the beginning.
Well, so long ago, my mom and dad met, and
Perfect.
we're just gonna go straight for origin of species. Um, no, I grew up on a ranch in Texas, like the seventh generation to grow up there. One side of my family was like uh, pure rancher. The other side of my family was like full creatives. So I was constantly like walking this interesting dichotomy of the two. Um, got into classical music and started training as a classical trumpet player. I went to college for that, Sydney, Australia, and got my degrees there. And then like realized that I really did not enjoy touring. I did not enjoy doing a lot of this stuff. So, you spent what, 12, 15 years, like coming up and becoming um, a very good musician. I was going to say world class, but then there's like, man, there's some really good people out there. Um, but like I'd spent a lot of time doing that and then realized like, I was like, oh, I hate this. This really sucks. Um, and I'd always kind of dabbled in filmmaking. It had been something more of as a hobby than something that I thought I could actually do as a career. But I was living in California at the time, and I just started kind of teaching myself really kind of to start moving into more of the business portion of that. Um, and then it just kind of bloomed from there. That's compressing like,
Yeah, because there's always
40
so
years
much.
of history here.
Right?
Man.
Like 2 seconds.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And I guess my question kind of comes in because we've had a few people that have done kind of career pivots, but a lot of them are kind of career pivots from something that's kind of not so much creative to something that's creative. So I guess my
Mm.
question comes in where what was that mindset like where it was you were already so deep delved into music, but then you kind of realized that film was where you wanted to transition into?
I mean, there's a dying process to
Mm.
anything like that, and there's a sense of guilt that kind of goes along with that. Both, like there's a guilt from like within yourself, and then there's a guilt that you're feeling because no creative is born alone. It
Mm.
comes from the sacrifice, oftentimes, of family. If you grew up playing an instrument, your mom and your dad are, if they're not wealthy, they're constantly like scraping together money to go get you trumpet and piano lessons and try to give you these opportunities. For us, we were an hour and a half out from the nearest city, so that was like, oh well, twice a week we're going to drive an hour and a half, and there's 3 hours of driving, 6 hours per week,
Mm.
and that's really tough. Um, for a family like mine was, where you, we were living out in the country, but we were doing things like, okay, guys, well, like, we're gonna go hunting, not because we want to go kill something, but that's because like, hey, that's food. That's how you make food for the year, guys.
Mhm.
We had our own cows that we were, milking to have food. We had my mom had a very large garden, and we were the deal was you finished school and you went out and you weeded the garden and you worked in you worked.
Yeah.
Um, so for that kind of environment to have put so much forward, and then I went to school in Sydney, and that took a lot of sacrifice on other people's parts because they helped get me there, and people donated money. I worked, and you put that much in there, and then so you're almost like feeling like, am I letting all these other people down that believed in
Mhm.
you, right? And even if you took up creativity later on, like if you have a spouse or someone that's loved you, and they watch you walk through the creative process, and they've watched you struggle, they've been the starving artist with you. There's a sense of like, we're doing this in order to have a better life, or we're doing this to have creative opportunities. And then when you walk away, it's like you're letting a part of that die. And we see this all the time, right? When you see an actor, let's say they go to LA, they spend their first 8 years there, trying to break in. Maybe they're good enough. Maybe they never were. Maybe they just weren't lucky enough to have the right break. And then they finally have to kind of come to the conclusion, well, my time's passed. I have to pull the trigger and walk away into, another kind of job. There's this sense of, am I walking away from fulfillment? Am I all these big dreams, all these big aspirations, all these things that I've done? Is there like a sense of betrayal?
Mhm.
And I think what I've learned, because like even as I've been inside like filmmaking, like there's pivots that you constantly have to make when you're running businesses and you're in the creative field. And some of them can sometimes feel like a betrayal, like you thought you were going in this direction and you spent so much time going in this one direction, and then you pivot, and there's something also there of like, I know I'm giving like super top level, like high, like, it's very top down kind of thinking here, but there's this process where you start thinking about, how do I how do I come to the conclusion that this is what I want?
Mm.
Mm.
And you can read online. I've written a bunch of stuff on like eudaimonia and like the nature of success and what that looks like, where we got the concept of it. And you sometimes I find that success in a creative field looks less like the opportunities that others have, and you doing the most with the opportunities that you currently have.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes because creatives get like, we have the innate ability, a lot of us have ADHD, and so we think like these expansive, crazy ideas very, very quickly, and so we don't get that opportunity to see those big visions come to life. There can be like this sense of self disappointment, like life never gave you a chance. And what I found is, it's less about that and more about like, what's in your hand right now. Like what's like
Mhm.
what like you have often extraordinary is just ordinary plus a little bit of extra. That's all it
Mhm.
is. So can you find beauty? Can you find excellence in the ordinary, and then give it a little bit of extra? And and then you end up having this extraordinary thing that kind of pops out of the ordinary. And then that's what gets people's attention, and that's what brings creative fulfillment. I was having this huge conversation with one of my with my prop masters, and she was telling me just how upset she was at how the industry has kind of treated her. And she has been a very well traveled and very successful prop master over the years, and she's done, a bunch of amazing films. And she's like, they keep telling us the industry's coming back, and it's not. And I was like, okay, it's not coming back. Awesome. What can we do now? And I said, well, there's like all these opportunities. And she was like, yeah, but that's all on the computer. And I'm like, yeah, but is anybody else offering you anything? And she's like, well, no. But I'm just upset because what I want to do is I want to, just make things with my hands again. I'm like, that's fine. And maybe we get a chance to do that again. But we have this like incredible opportunity to start doing stuff that's even farther outside the box.
Hmm.
So like why not take the opportunity that's given, and then we just raise the bar, you know? So I
Hmm.
don't I don't know, that may be a little bit vague, and that was a long answer for what you what you asked.
I think it was perfect though, because it's a tough question to answer, and then it also leads into so many different things, and I think you answered it beautifully.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel myself feeling so impacted by so many of the things that you said, and just by this ability that you've had to be so present, and kind of like stubbornly optimistic, but not unrealistically either. Being able to pivot, being able to move in new directions. And I'm curious if that's something that is just innate to who you are, like as a person, as an artist, or if it's something that you've kind of had to forge in the fires of all of these transitions.
I mean, who hasn't been forged in the fires and been in the creative industry for, a number of years? You know, like ask anyone who started in like film, and let's just say they started in film 1987, 1989, 1990,
Hmm.
right? And they came in the film era, and then they had to flip to digital, right? First they have to
Hmm.
flip to DV, right? And you're running DV tapes, but we're starting to build in like linear editing systems, and you're editing on tape systems, and then you move into full digital. And I know a bunch of people that came out of film college, a film school, like right around 1993, and they were like, "Oh, what they taught me." And then I got out, and then the world was absolutely nothing like what I'd been taught, and everyone was moving into this digital thing, and I didn't know how to do it, and so they gave up. Which reminds me a lot of people right now that are going to film school, and they're coming out, and then they walk into AI, like, and they're getting like walking into a brick wall, and they've been
Hmm.
taught that this is how film works, and then they get out and it's completely different. And I'm like, well, you got a choice. You get to choose. You're not going to stop it. You're not going to change it. So like, you can either have fun with this, and like, and grow from it, or you can just stop and complain about it and tell me about how you wanted the job that's not there anymore. So like, we pivot, man. Like that is the beauty of being creative. And somehow like we get lost in our own legend in some ways, of like, well, this is how great artists are, and this is how we build, and feel like great artists are built in uncertainty,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're built from like building perspectives, from things that people don't realize were awesome.
Hmm.
And the best art, I don't want to say the best art comes out of pain, because then people take that too far. um but there's a the best art comes from the searching of the soul.
I
I think
love
that
that.
might be a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Absolutely.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. And I think kind of doing a small pivot myself, but also staying kind of on brand with what we were just talking about with kind of like the beauty and pivoting and all of these different things. One of the things that I know we mentioned near the beginning of the episode is you also are working on, you said experimental full scale productions. Tell us more about that and kind of like, especially the experimental side, as much as you can.
So yeah, no. So if you look stuff up, you can look up Texas Legacy nlights.com and take a look at that. So we decided to do. I moved back to the small town I grew up in. Like it's seven
Mhm.
thousand people. It's outside of Austin. Was
Mhm.
tired of dealing with Austin. I was like, I told my business partners, I'm like, you will find me like on some small street somewhere, but I am done. Like everybody's doing Zoom calls anyway. So why do I need to be here?
Mhm.
Like I have no like, are you kidding? Like
Yeah.
we're paying through the nose for offices but like, oh, I can go get an office over, for like, 1,000 square feet for $600 a month. Are you kidding me? Like, like,
Yeah.
like, so I found like an office on the town square. I put cardboard over the windows so no one knew I was there. And I was like, it's abandoned, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I feel so sorry, Main Street. I know y'all were trying to make everything beautiful. I was like, just leave me alone. Um, but I ended up meeting some of the people that were like they were running the Gonzales Main Street and the Gonzales EDC. Um, and I was talking to them about Gonzales and where we'd kind of made a lot of our money over the years has been Fortune 500 companies.
Mhm.
So Payless, Walmart, Dell, Intel.
Mhm.
You become part of the cog and you make things happen.
Yeah.
Um, but we were what that did teach me was a lot of like, what does it look like for consistency? What does it look like for high level consistent like professional output, and at both large and small scale. And I was just talking to them about what Gonzales needed, and they were like, "Well, we need something to bring people here at night." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "We also need to really tell the story of Gonzales. Gonzales is kind of what started the Texas Revolution. It started a lot of um, it started from like farmers basically standing up against um, a dictator, and they had
Mhm.
absolutely no chance. And it was literally like this little 7,000 person town. Well, it wasn't even 7,000. It was like 100 and something people up against the Mexican army. And it was just it's kind of like insane story. And they were like, it really hasn't been told well, and a lot of it got overshadowed by the Alamo and
Mhm.
Goliad and these like mass massacres. Um, Nothing says Texas like a good massacre. And
Too real.
um, and so I was like, well, this story does need to be told. And I was like, how do we do this? And they had this Art Deco museum that was kind of in the center of town. It was 96 feet long by 32 feet high, made out of white stone at in 1920, in 1925.
Mhm.
Um, and it was like one of the few museums that were kind of left. It was made as a centennial museum. I think it was like one of seven museums that Texas made at its 100 year, and we were coming up on the bicentennial. And I was just kind of like, I was like, well, that's you know what could work is I'd done some work on with another Fortune 500 company with like a logo, and had done like a bunch of projection mapping onto it. And I
Hmm.
was like, that building, we could totally do projection mapping onto that building. And I gave them like three very kind of like simple choices. Like there was some of them were like, hey, this we could do like a podcast, or like interview local businesses, blah blah blah. We could do like basically like a documentary. And then I was like, or this I have this crazy insane idea of like, what if we did a live like the world's first live action projection mapping film on the side of that building. And they said, that's amazing. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, I can do it. They're like, well, how much does that even cost? I'm like, I have no idea. Um, like, like you're all of a sudden like you're talking on the not technological side, where like there's not really a commercial option at the time for projectors that can deal with, because I pitched this idea of like a large scale show that would basically shoot that would play twice a night, 6 days a week,
Mm.
and be like originally I think I was thinking like a 12-minute show, ended up being like 34 minutes. And I was like, okay, so we need projectors that can withstand the Texas heat, the cold, the water, the rain, the humidity, the dirt, um, all that stuff has to be able to be taken care of. And then I was like, well, what about sound? And the area that we needed to cover was 90,000 square feet.
Mm.
Wow.
So I was like, I called one of my buddies. We met in Australia and we had worked together. He was a sound engineer, and then he'd worked doing like media for NASA. And I said, look, I said, I need some help. I'm getting outside my depth, because what I was thinking, I was like, if we put like big speakers at the front of this museum and we're projecting the sound back, the problem was is that I had residential areas like really close by. So if you're projecting all this sound, all of a sudden, and you're trying to push, almost over 100 yards of sound out, you're just
Hmm.
blasting, and like you're just going to wake the entire neighborhood. So what we came up with was this system of small like sections of sound, where we would basically create smaller zones that would work off proximity. So we could have a lot more speakers, but
Hmm.
very, very close together, so that when you were sitting inside these zones, you could hear it, and it would sound like you're in a movie theater. And we like buried subs underneath the ground and started using the ground as an amplification system for the subs. And and then we were dealing with like, okay, as we're building through the zones, we need to make sure that as the video still stayed in sync, because at the end you're almost like 300 yards away. So if you're 300 yards away, the light is coming in and we need the sound to hit your ears at the same time. So we need
Yeah.
to delay that out, but we also need to make it so that we don't end up running into phases and end up like creating like these weird echoes all the way down the field. So we kind of figured all that out. And and then came the part where we were like, okay, now we're going to make a film that's live action projection mapping. And if you've ever looked at projection mapping, it's really interesting, because when Disney does it, and when a lot of other companies do this, they don't use live action. You use animation, you use graphics. It makes perfect sense. You're trying to bend a two-dimensional image into a three-dimensional object. It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
And so we're like, no, we're going to shoot and we're going to project live action onto this. But then we're dealing with this screen that's like a normal IMAX. We're almost like double the size of a normal IMAX. And then I'm going like, well, how the hell do we do that? And we have all these like multiple surfaces and multiple depths
Hmm.
and parts of the architecture, and like these are part of the stairs. And then I was like, okay, well, what if we started treating each section like a different part of the screen? Like each one of these are multiple different screens. And then what if we started blending them together? So it'll look like one image, but multiple images at the same time. So kind of like how we're looking at our screen right now, and we have
Yeah.
multiple of us on, but let's blend it together so that, like, if I'm talking to Simone and we're talking at each other, I can be on this camera, and if she looked towards my profile, all of a sudden we're both talking at each other, and we're blending the two together, even though we're on two completely separate frames. It looks like one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So, and so then we started playing around with like, okay, we have to rearrange how we think about editing, how we think about filming. So we ended up using five 12K Blackmagic LFs, and we would shoot the entire scene with like five cameras running all at the same time so that we could blend all those pieces together
Yeah.
and make it like one image. So sometimes you might actually be seeing the same scene from like three or four different angles at the same time, like you're watching a multi-viewer. But then other times we'd have like, okay, well, these other characters are coming in from like the left side. These other characters are coming in from the right. So what we ended up kind of doing was we also had like a reflection pool in the middle. So what we did is we kind of split the screen in essence, even though it looks like one, because the way that you would view it is normally split. If you watch the left side of the screen, you get a different story than if you watch the right side of the screen. And so that ended up creating a deal where we were like, we're trying to get you to come back multiple times to watch this. Because depending on which side of the building and how close or how far away you are, will change the way that you see the story.
Yeah.
Um, and and then we started like actually filming. So altogether, we had about 190 person cast and crew, which is
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people to put on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Ask me how I know. um, and we were dealing with historical costumes and buckskins and all the corsets, and we were measuring clothes by the ton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't know we could measure clothes by the ton, but apparently you can.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we were doing. But we had like just so many like amazing artisans and craftsmen come around, and work with us, and they were like, this is a really cool story. And there are some times where like you have a project and no one really wants to do it, and you can normally tell that no one actually wants to do it because their prices stay high. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
others that you're like, look, I can't afford you, so I need some consulting work, and they're like, no, 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 you're not getting away from me that fast. Like, no, 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 I want to do this. And we had a lot of that, where people were like, we don't care about the rate, just get us in.
Yeah.
This is insane. And we somehow pulled it off.
Yeah.
So we've kind of really started pushing into more and more kind of experimental work and kind of designing and building and rethinking how we talk about editing, how we talk about filmmaking, how
Mm-hmm.
we talk about sound design, production, and kind of moving that whole conversation forward. And then also, I think one of the things that we've really pushed into and that I'm really passionate about is I'm really passionate about people understanding that small places can do really big things.
Mm.
And you don't have to settle for what everybody thinks you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That just like your description of it, and like my brain trying to visualize that, it just sounds incredible. It sounds
Well, you just got to
incredibly
come and see it,
taxing
man.
to, yeah.
Yeah, let's go. I gotta see this in
It's a
person.
field trip.
Behind the
That's
scenes,
it.
I'm really
Yeah.
You can only see it here.
Hmm.
That that's shameless plug. You got to come see it here.
love it. Please, no, plug more. Which is a good transition. We never have enough time. There's so many important things to talk about, so much to cover. So a couple final questions, but first, where can people see your work? This not only this production that you're working on, but also like where can we find access to you and follow your career and
I
your
mean,
creative?
you can always find us on Instagram and stuff under Austin Film Crew. You can on our website. We're trying to keep everything kind of up to date, and that's austinfilmcrew.com. And Texas Legacy and Lights is where you can see more about this project. And it does. It plays 6 days a week, twice a night in Gonzales, Texas. You can come out there, bring a lawn chair, and watch it like all kind of come together. And then we have on Mondays, we actually is the day off, but we have a secret show that randomly changes and that no one in really the city like gets to know what's going to pop up. It just happens.
Yeah.
And that's really meant for
Perfect.
more of it's like more for the locals. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
there's something cool happening.
That
So
rocks.
yeah.
I love
Awesome.
that.
Heck yeah.
Perfect. All right,
John,
Tevin, you
thank
want to ask our final question?
Yeah, my final question, which is always one of my favorites, and you've kind of already given a few beautiful answers through this whole episode, but whether it's one sentence, a bullet point, a paragraph, but just advice to any creative of any age trying to get into their respective field.
Trying to get into the perspective field.
Yeah. Or maybe already are, but quite not seeing it for themselves yet.
I think the beauty of creativity is that it gives you the ability to see answers to hard questions.
Hmm.
Mm,
So find the hard question and solve the hard question.
Hmm.
And like when we there's a difference in between, and you can find it. And part of this is training, but you can see the difference in between a real creative and someone who's following a template. They found a template that worked for them, and it just wrote. And I don't care whether you're talking about music or you're talking about film or
Mhm.
painting. I found this system and it works, and then you walk away. I feel like a real creative applies creative thinking regardless of the problem that they are given,
mm,
be, because that is who they are. And the only thing that they're doing is hopefully increasing their skill set in like and we're just applying being a creative to a different skill set. If you talk to me about music, I can talk to you about music. You talk to me about writing, I can talk to you about writing. If you want to talk about philosophy or geography, or you want to talk to me about um, business problems, whether you were talking about like specific industries or whatever it is, I have had the opportunity to consult and help people think outside the box on things that were way outside my expertise level because I thought differently.
Hmm.
And the ability to think outside the box, while it is a liability for some. Okay,
Mhm.
if you're in the wrong place, outside of the box thinking is a liability, not an asset.
mm,
But in
Mhm.
the talking to the right people, thinking outside the box is an asset, and it's finding the people that understand what that is and then you showing the initiative and the flexibility to apply that type of thinking to whatever problem comes your way. It makes you incredibly valuable. And regardless of what industry you're trying to get into, you're trying to be valuable to other people through your art. Even if you were just making, if you were making, a painting that's just for you, at the end of the day, you're going, I hope that this painting is valuable to other people because it touches them, it emotionally affects them, it inspires them. Therefore, they're going to pay us money. They're going to give me an opportunity, but also that it changes something inside of them. So you can do that in so many different ways. And so even if you did choose a different path creatively than you thought you were going to, it doesn't really matter as long as you are the one that stays creative.
Mm.
I love that.
Beautiful line. Beautiful line. Perfect way to end.
John, thank you so
Sorry,
much.
I know that was not a sentence.
That was genuinely like,
Perfect.
that's why I say sentence, bullet point, paragraph, because that was a beautiful answer that I don't think we've had before that I genuinely loved. Thank you for that. And thank you for being on the episode with us today. And kind of being on Skype, and thank you for all of the things that you're doing, not only for your own community, but kind of like pushing yourself forward creatively, and just thank you in general.
Yeah, no worries. I'm really happy y'all asked me to come on.
And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Creatives Podcast. Once again, my name is Tevin Brown.
And I'm Simone Campbell.
And you guys can find us on Catharsis Media's channel as well as Studio 519's channels. Please be sure to go check them out. If you are in the Austin area, or even what was the actual town for the show?
It's Gonzales, but if you're in
Gonzales.
San Antonio, Houston, Austin, you're there.
If you're in any of those areas, please be sure to go check this out. Go check out Austin Film Crew, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, Austin Film Crew. Please check out their website. Please check out their Instagram. Check out all of their things, and also check us out. You can find us here on you can find us here on YouTube. You can find us here on Instagram. You can find us on a ton of different pieces. Hopefully, more in the future. And just overall, thank you guys, and please have a great night.